And we're back. I said I wasn't going to cover the last Instagram Q&A because, frankly, if I wanted to lose brain cells, I could just bash my head against the wall. But then she dropped another one, because of course she did. But I am going to go over both the Q&As. Not every question. I'm going to cut out the ones about buzzballs, food, and whatever nonsense she's claiming as a personality trait this week. There's nothing particularly new here, but a couple of answers caught my eye. And by caught my eye, I mean they made me tilt my head like a confused owl and mutter, "What the hell is this?" So, let's go. Let's get comfortable. We're diving in. The eternal promise. Yes, she says. Of course she will. Much like the tides or a toddler insisting they really will go to bed this time, Amberlynn will always return to the weight loss content. It's a familiar cycle. Announce, promise, pivot, collapse, repeat. But do I believe her? No, because saying yes costs nothing. Commitment, consistency, evidence, those require effort. And if history has taught us anything, it's that Amberlynn's favourite kind of weight loss content is the kind where she simply declares it's happening, offers no proof, and then expects applause for the ambition alone. And then the obligatory ego massage. A declaration of love met with a vague blanket thank you tossed out like stale confetti at a pity parade. Thank you everyone for the support lately. What support? The people you're blocking? The comment sections you curate like a dictator with a Wi-Fi signal? She acts like she's standing atop a balcony waving to adoring masses. She's just a moron with a keyboard and a need for chaos. Another grand reveal. Another dramatic unveiling of content that will, in a matter of days, decay back into old stuff, passive-aggressive Q&As and live streams where she threatens to log off. This isn't a phoenix rising from the ashes. This is the same pigeon lighting its tail feathers on fire for the 10th time. And as for missing her video, she literally posted yesterday. This break has had more content than her regular schedule. She's declaring a vow of silence through a megaphone. And then another uplifting affirmation from the cult of enablers. A valiant sentiment, truly. You're so strong, they say. Strong enough, apparently, to survive a self-imposed break while uploading daily content and spiraling on Instagram. Remarkable. What exactly is she being congratulated for here? Breathing through the haze? Ignoring Tommy-related questions in record time? Calling every reaction channel ableist? Strength is admirable. Performative fragility masquerading as strength? That's just branding. The old accountability line served lukewarm with a generous side of self-congratulation. Even when valid, she says, as though she's standing trial for sainthood. Acknowledging a disorder is not the same as weaponizing it to deflect critique. If this is her version of accountability, it's just a sigh and a shrug. No apology, no change, just a vague gesture toward growth while sitting perfectly still. She's not taking responsibility. She's taking credit for being the bare minimum that a person can be. Never is a very dramatic word for someone we all know is already sniffing around for the next source of dopamine in her DMs. She says she'll never trust again, but we've seen this cycle 100 times too. Trust, trauma, tears, repeat. She treats trust like it's a $5 Walmart candle. She burns it fast, tosses it out, and buys a new one by the next week. And betrayal? Amber, betrayal implies you were honest and open in the first place. You cannot be betrayed by someone you manipulated into orbit. She says this as though she's leading a movement, as though the world has paused to hear what Amberlynn Reid will do in the face of adversity. Spoiler alert, she's gonna do what she always does. Weaponize the diagnosis when convenient, ignore it when accountability enters the chat, and twist any criticism into an attack on mental health. Advocacy isn't announcing, "I have BPD," like it's a Girl Scout badge and then lashing out at people while hiding behind it. Advocacy is consistency, empathy, and growth. 3 things she's never managed to maintain for longer than it takes to eat a family-sized bag of Doritos. Ah, the ceremonial blocking. Amber's version of royal decree. Erased him from my life, she says, as if she's banished him from the kingdom of her mind forever. And yet, here she is answering questions about him again. Amber, if you truly had no interest, you wouldn't feel the need to clarify his social media status like you're updating the court on a diplomatic exile. The lady doth protest too much, methinks. Or, in her case, she doth refresh too often. With time, it'll happen. No, darling, with effort it might happen. With time alone, all that happens is another mukbang, another livestream meltdown, and another emotional detour disguised as growth. She speaks as though healing is delivered by Amazon Prime if you just sit still long enough. Trauma isn't a plot device in your personal soap opera. It's a wound that requires care, not camera angles. But of course, in Amberland, time is a substitute for accountability, and the audience is just expected to wait patiently while she learns nothing. There it is, the pivot from discussion to declaration. The comment wasn't a denial of any shaming, it was just a general observation. But Amber doesn't respond to nuance. She hears "not everyone" and translates it to "no one believes me." Of course, there are people who shame mental illness. That's the world. But this isn't about that. This is about her using any single negative comment to discredit all criticism and paint herself as the martyr of BPD land. She doesn't want understanding, she wants immunity. And the moment someone dares suggest that maybe spiraling publicly on Instagram isn't the healthiest coping mechanism, she slaps on the BPD badge and screams ableism like it's a spell that ends the conversation. The tragedy. The spirit has left her, like a ghost fleeing the ruins of its own bad decisions. It's poetic, and it's hollow. This is what Amber does best. She packages emotional regression as vulnerability, hoping the pity it inspires will just distract from the patterns that it reveals. Happy, bubbly Amberlynn is gone, she says, as if it was taken from her by force, rather than buried under years of manipulation, ego, and performative victimhood. She doesn't miss being open, she misses being unquestioned. Back when people didn't push back, back when the masks were working. But now that the audience has wised up, she's suddenly sad. She's suddenly empty. No, Amber, you're not empty. You're exposed. Thank you. Of course. The royal seal of approval for yet another pearl clutcher in the court of Queen Delusion. Let's be honest. Calling everyone else money hungry while sitting on YouTube during a self-declared break, peddling salami streams and reaction rants for coin is rich. Literally. Amber's outrage over people making money off her name is adorable, coming from someone whose entire brand relies on mining her own chaos for clicks. And yet the moment someone dares hold up a mirror, suddenly they're the villain with a cash register for a heart? Darling, you're not upset that others profit from your mess. You're upset that they're better at it than you are. She isn't taking the high road, she's taking the scenic route through Delusionville, population Amber. You want the moral upper hand, but you also want the drama. That's why you answer questions just vague enough to stir the pot without taking any accountability for it tipping over. You're not above the mess, you just like to pretend you're not the one stirring it with both hands. And now the strength narrative. You've been through so much, yet still here. Well, darling, so is mildew. Longevity does not equal triumph. Amber's brand of strength is not perseverance, it's stubborn inertia wrapped in victimhood. She's not rising above the chaos, she's marinating in it and calling it resilience. There's no arc here, there's no growth, no phoenix from the ashes moment. Just the same tired storyline with a new filter and a different buzzball flavour. Oh, she's journaling. Well, that explains absolutely nothing. Amber's idea of journaling is just a stream of passive-aggressive affirmations. Everyone's obsessed with me, scroll between doodles of Diet Coke cans and half-hearted gratitude lists. Journaling's supposed to foster insight, clarity, accountability. But in her case, it's probably just an echo chamber where she's always the hero, always the victim, and never the problem. But sure, Amber, keep scribbling. Maybe one day you'll accidentally scribble yourself into self-awareness. Yeah, exhausting. I'm sure it is. Imagining yourself as the tragic heroine in everyone else's story must be draining. But here's the truth. You are not the main character. You're not the plot twist. You're not even the villain. You're the cautionary tale. The walking parable of what happens when ego outpaces self-awareness. You're not the main character. You're the lesson, Amber. You're the moral. You're the paragraph underlined in red in someone else's diary that reads, "Do not end up like this." A multitude, she says. How scholarly. Did she pick that up from the back of a box somewhere? Or did someone slip it into a live stream in the comments? I'm impressed she made it through all 3 syllables without pulling a muscle. But let's be real, if Lego pulled out of America tomorrow, she'd be filming a rage vlog in under 30 minutes, declaring herself betrayed, blocked, and victimized by the Danish. And this sudden vocabulary upgrade, I'm just praying multitude doesn't become the next hectic, repeated until it deflates like a balloon at a pity party. And now we're diving into the empowerment arc, delivered like a Netflix monologue minus the clarity or character development. I deserve to have a voice, period. No one said you didn't. The issue isn't that you speak, it's what you say, why you say it, and the ever-growing gap between your claims and your conduct. This isn't about reclaiming her voice. It's about recontrolling the narrative. She stayed silent not out of grace or trauma, but because silence gave her plausible deniability. Now that the stories are slipping from her grip, suddenly she's found her voice again? She's not a phoenix, she's a PR nightmare with Wi-Fi. And her voice would carry more weight if it wasn't constantly screeching between I'm a victim and I'm above it all. Just pick one. You're exhausting the script. There was zero dragging, she says, capital letters and all. Like it's going to erase the scorched earth trail that Beck and Destiny have left behind. If there's anyone on this platform more obsessed with historical receipts, ancient texts, and decade-old screenshots than her, I've yet to see them. This is the same woman who hoards her old phones like gold, waiting for the day she can weaponize them in a community post. Let's not pretend she's above it all. She is not insulted by the dragging. She's threatened that they did it better than she ever could. And now she's scrambling to reframe it as weak because she can't control it. She's the museum curator of her own victimhood, and they just bulldoze her entire exhibit. Exactly, the one-word agreement tossed out like confetti. Yes, she's allowed to speak. No one is duct-taping a ring light to the wall and forbidding her from going live in a filter with the devil horns. She's never stopped speaking. The problem is she speaks constantly, just never with clarity, consistency, or conscience. She doesn't want permission to speak. She wants immunity from consequence. She wants to monologue without rebuttal, control the narrative without contradiction, and sob on camera without someone saying this feels manipulative. The prodigal hater turned supporter. She loves this stuff. It's the ultimate validation fantasy. The reformed critic who has seen the light and now worships at the altar of curated victimhood. Greatly appreciated, she replies, like she's handing out medals to fallen soldiers of the comment section. But this isn't growth, it's a script, and she's cast herself once again as the misunderstood underdog in a story she wrote alone. I won't be diminished to any of this. No one's diminishing you. You're doing that all by yourself, with every smug live stream, every weaponized diagnosis, every conveniently timed sob caught on front-facing camera. As for there's so much good in me, well, even the most chaotic hurricanes occasionally water a garden, but that doesn't mean we should trust them with the landscaping. You want DBT to fix you, but therapy isn't a magic spell. It's a mirror. And you've spent over a decade smashing every reflection that doesn't flatter you. Healing isn't a catchphrase, it's a choice, and frankly you haven't shown up for it yet. The restraint, the moral high ground, the self-proclaimed keeper of secrets. She's so noble. She says it's about ethics, about not putting people on blast. But let us not forget, this is the same woman who vlogged her exes in their lowest moments, filmed medical emergencies and bathroom trips for views. The privacy she claims to honour, she already sold it. She doesn't keep the tea. She stores it like blackmail in a digital vault, ready to be referenced with just enough vagueness to keep herself looking like the composed one. This isn't restraint, it's strategy. Because if she really had no intention of spilling, she wouldn't need to remind us how easily she could. It's so poetic. Amber's on a break that looks suspiciously like full-time content creation, and then Zachary Michael also steps back. So of course she clutches this coincidence like it's a medal of honor, convinced she's playing 5D chess while everyone else is simply just out there living their lives. Didn't I tell you, she says like she's just predicted a lunar eclipse. No, Amber, you didn't manifest this. Not everything revolves around you. Zachary Michael's break probably isn't about Amber, but hers is still very much about him. Influencer mode activated. She's made someone else pick up Lego, and suddenly she's the architect of a generational hobby movement. She's so chipper, so casual, but so utterly devoid of reflection. But I suppose if she's not trauma dumping or screaming ableist, this is her version of light content. It's always such whiplash with this woman. One minute she's weeping over betrayal and the next she's yelling about Lego. I've been the problem, she says. Yes, we all remember the Oscar-worthy moment where she whispered, "I've done things I regret," into the camera before immediately blaming them on trauma, weight, BPD, the moon, and the haters in the comments. This isn't accountability. It's deflection disguised as depth. She says, "If you think I haven't admitted fault, you're not hearing me. We hear you just fine. You are loud. What we don't hear is responsibility without qualifiers, apologies without conditions, or change without an audience. It's not that you've never been the problem. It's that you never mean it when you say you were." 5 years is a long time to witness someone circling the same drain and calling it personal growth. You deserve better, they say, but better than what? The consequences of her own behaviour? The very cycle she created, nurtured and monetized? And Amber's reply is just the standard, "Thank you, I appreciate it." Just enough sweetness to keep the enablers close, and just vague enough to avoid sincerity. She knows exactly how to keep these supporters tethered, give them crumbs of gratitude, and never let them look at the full picture for too long. Rules for me but not for thee. She adores this phrase. She clings to it like it's proof of injustice rather than a transparent projection of her own hypocrisy. Amber, you didn't just vanish quietly from YouTube. You flounced off in a blaze of vagueness, tears, and cryptic posts, only to immediately keep posting everywhere else. Instagram, live streams, community tabs. You've been more visible during your break than when you were actively uploading. And now she's policing Zachary Michael's break announcement? She's giddy about it. She wants it to be about her. She wants his absence to be part of her orbit. But here's the thing. He took a break. She staged a production. The difference is his is quiet. Hers is thirsty. Nah, he's on a break, hun. He always is when I don't post. The center of the universe has spoken, I guess. She really believes that when she disappears, the world dims. That every reactor sits motionless in a chair somewhere bathed in melancholic lamplight whispering, "But where's Amber gone?" Like they've been left behind in some limbo. They're not in stasis, Amber, they're just living their lives. Unlike you, they actually have lives beyond their ring light and comment section. They take breaks when they want to, not because your upload schedule hiccuped. You're not the sun, you're just a flickering light bulb in a content circus tent. It's like that Family Guy episode where Stewie and Brian go back to the beginning and see what happens when the cutaway gags are happening and everyone just stands there.
Wait, what are they doing? I don't know, they're just standing there like zombies. Do you think they're all right? I'm not sure.
And then there was that time at the ice cream store.
That is so creepy.
That is what she thinks reaction channels are doing between her uploads. Just waiting in silence with nothing else going on. She really does believe that they're just waiting for her next upload because they have nothing else in their lives. It's really quite sad, but it's not the reaction channels who are the sad ones. You aren't in my life so you wouldn't know. How convenient. When it's time to collect sympathy, her entire existence is content. But when she's called out, suddenly we're all strangers peeking in through the blinds. Amber, if your apologies were happening off camera, they're not accountability. They're fiction. They're just a private, unverifiable myth that she spins when a public behaviour catches up with her. And yeah, having BPD may explain the outburst, but it doesn't erase the impact. You don't get to weaponize a diagnosis, refuse responsibility, and then claim invisible apologies in closed-door moments as proof of personal growth. You don't need to be in her life to see the pattern. It's right there in every stream, every smug comment, every moment she never learns from. The slow awakening of Queen Victim. I realized I was being used. How narratively convenient. For years, she paraded those relationships on camera, until the curtain fell, suddenly they were the villains and she was just a bruised heroine caught in the crossfire of their manipulation. How cinematic and unoriginal. No one is perfect, she says, tossing it out like a disclaimer like it softens the next hit. But it's not an act of humility. It's a setup. A way to seem fair before delivering the real message. They're worse, I was innocent. Amber doesn't do reflection. She does reframing. Always the used, never the user. Always the victim, never the common denominator. We didn't need Destiny and Beck's video to realize who was really benefiting from spinning that narrative. She told us, over and over again. Literally. Yes, when all else fails, scream relatability into the void and hope it drowns out the receipts. Yes, it's true, exes often clash. They argue, they vent, they spiral. But most people don't have a decade-long YouTube trail of themselves lying, manipulating, love-bombing, gaslighting, and broadcasting every meltdown like it's primetime TV. Beck and Destiny didn't shift the public tide. Amber did, long ago. With every smug laugh, every crocodile tear, every I don't want to talk about it that turned into a 90-minute live stream, they didn't make her look bad. She filmed herself doing that willingly. So yeah, round up most people's exes and you'll hear complaints. I shudder to think what would happen if all of mine got together for a conversation. But only in Amber's case will those complaints be backed up by 10 years of public evidence. A cathartic journal session, was it? How profound. You can only imagine the emotional excavation. Everyone's mean, I'm misunderstood, reactions are obsessed, buzzball or no buzzball. It's always so heavy with her, but never illuminating. Catharsis requires insight, reflection, that thing where you recognize patterns and maybe stop repeating them. But with Amber, journaling is just another performance, only the audience is her own ego. She says it helped her feel better. Of course it did. Nothing soothes like writing your own fanfiction and calling it growth. Speaking her truth? A phrase so overused it's meaningless, especially in Amber's hands where truth is whatever garners the most sympathy that day. She doesn't speak in truths, she speaks in strategies. And thank you? Of course, always polite when the validation's flowing. That's the currency she actually trades in. The real truth is that Amber speaks not to be understood, but to stay undefeated. And that's not honesty. I would love a Q&A with Amberlynn, just without Amber there. We'd do it, but the haters, she says. The eternal excuse. How convenient that the audience is always to blame for content that never exists. Amber doesn't want to do a Q&A with her mother, not because of the hate, but because she knows the questions will be real. There'll be questions about her childhood, her shifting narratives, about all the years she painted her mother as a villain in this sad little memoir made for views. And worst of all, she knows people still like her mother. They don't see her as Saint Mama Lynn, sure, but they'd still rather have a drink with her than Amber. That's the real reason. It's not protecting her mother, it's not because the audience is too mean. It's that Amber cannot bear to share the stage with someone who might accidentally steal her spotlight by simply being more likable. Wounded, of course. The inner child is always conveniently bleeding when the adult refuses to take accountability. Darling, we've all got wounds. The difference is that most of us try to heal, not weaponize them. Amber flashes her trauma like a loyalty card. Show it, get sympathy. But there's a difference between honouring your past and hiding behind it. Her inner child isn't the issue. It's the fully grown adult who uses that child like a human shield every time the consequences knock. It's all hype, she says, referring to a cookie like she didn't once fornicate with it on camera. This isn't about pastry, this is about performance. She's answering a question tied to old drama intentionally. She's pretending she's unbothered. She's rewriting history as if she was in on the joke all along. This isn't damage control, it's revisionist cringe. And much like that poor cookie, the moment has long since expired. I don't send any to myself, she says. Yeah, and the sky isn't blue unless she filters it first. She claims she's proven it time and again with screenshots and screen recordings, but that proves nothing. It's the digital equivalent of saying trust me bro while showing a blurry mirror selfie. Her biggest tell is her obsession with defending things no one believes until she starts over-explaining. The more she insists, the more it stinks of projection, especially when these oddly worded, eerily flattering questions roll in mid-meltdown like a life raft. No one said you were subtle, Amber. We just said you were predictable. A classic Amber maneuver. I was terrified, but also the comedic timing was iconic months later. She wants it both ways, the sympathy of the concerned caretaker and the deniability of hindsight humour. What she fails to grasp is that the moment you start photographing someone unconscious in a vulnerable state, you forfeited your credibility as the worried crying party. And let's be honest, if this were any other YouTube posting receipts of their passed out partner for future laughs, she would be the first to cry abuse. But since it's Amber, it was trauma until it became content, like everything else in her life. Especially off YouTube, the land of unseen suffering, How convenient. That mythical space where Amber is always the most misunderstood, the most fragile, and the most real, but always just beyond the reach of the camera lens. Amber weaponizes her BPD the same way she weaponizes everything else. As a shield when she's cornered, and as a sword when she's challenged. And the constant invalidation she complains about, she invited it, with her own performative chaos, her curated emotional outbursts, and her refusal to acknowledge that BPD explains behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. People aren't dismissing her diagnosis, they're dismissing the manipulation she wraps in it. And that is not ableism, it's discernment. And here it is, classic projection with a garnish of martyrdom. Amber believes that reaction channels exist not to critique her documented behavior, but to distract themselves from their own miserable little lives. She pictures Mr. Snowflake, Salty Crab, and Karina gathering around at a seance chanting, "If we just insult her, our rent will pay itself." But she's not a punching bag. She's a public figure with 10 years of willfully chaotic, exploitative content, and that is what's being responded to. No one's breaking into her house and filming her in secret. This is her footage, her edits, and her uploads. And the reaction community didn't make it okay, she did. She monetized cruelty, mocked the disabled, exploited relationships, filmed her partners in distress, and played trauma like a greatest hits album. She made it content. The fact that she's an easy target isn't because the world is cruel. It's because she spent a decade making herself visible while refusing to grow. A typical "that's not me anymore" defense, except all current footage says otherwise. She scoffs at the idea of old messages resurfacing, as if her digital fossil record doesn't stretch a full decade, as if those messages don't mirror her present-day behavior with eerie precision. Amber doesn't cringe because she's grown. She cringes because she got caught. Even messages from 3 years ago, she says. 3 years ago you were doing exactly what you're doing now. The gaslighting, the victim playing, the smug live streams, it's all still there. Even the filters are the same. She doesn't fear her past because it's unrecognizable. She fears it because it's still undeniably her. And now she's spiraling in sonnets again. I never betrayed them. We have video evidence, hours of it. You betrayed them with every exploitative upload, every passive-aggressive jab, every moment you chose the camera over compassion. If this were a courtroom, she'd be convicted in 10 minutes with her own footage as a star witness. She clutches her pearls like it's shocking the exes she manipulated, filmed at their worst, and mocked might eventually break their silence. They just hated me the whole time, she wails like it's a Shakespearean tragedy, a not natural consequence of sustained emotional abuse. And then, of course, the money. Because if there's one thing that Amberlynn can't imagine, it's being criticised without profit as the motive. She projects her own motivations onto everyone else. If she exploits people for money, then surely everyone else must too. But the thing is, Beck and Destiny are not telling us anything we didn't already suspect. They're just confirming it, with stories that match what Amber herself has already showed us. She's not mad that they're lying. She's mad that they're telling the truth. And she's done, you guys. We've heard this declaration more times than we've heard it go hello hello at the start of a vlog. This is her version of a season finale. It's dramatic, it's tearful, but devoid of permanence. She swears off love the way she swears off mukbangs, loudly, temporarily, and with full knowledge she'll be doing it again. Let's be real, she'll be talking to someone new by next week, love bombing by the second week, and uploading cryptic "I'm glowing" posts by the third. The only thing she's committed to is the content. Imagine if I did it. Amber, sweetheart, you have. You've done it more than once. You've made videos dragging people, uploading vulnerable moments, mocking identities, airing private conflicts. This performance only works if we forget the entire YouTube archive. But unfortunately for Amber, her track record is full of red flags. And as for Salty Crab's video being harassment, it wasn't. It was well-reasoned, calmly delivered, and evidence-backed. She wants the rules to shift when she's the one under the microscope, but no one's rewriting the rulebook just because the villain doesn't like how the story ends. I'm sure she does think about that. Not out of remorse, but out of fear. Because deep down, she knows the legacy she's curating isn't built on love, resilience, or even redemption. It's built on manipulation, evasion, and just enough weaponized vulnerability to keep the sympathy faucet dripping. She spent a decade choosing content over connection, drama over dignity, and now she sits there wondering why the story still tastes bitter. You don't want to look back on a life filled with hatred? Then stop stoking the fire. Because you're not just surrounded by smoke, you're the one lighting the matches. Of course she agrees. Amber will co-sign anything that reframes her as the innocent party in her own carefully curated war zone. What her exes are doing is telling the truth. They're lifting the curtain on the chaos that she spent years disguising as content. They're validating what audiences have watched unfold in real time. They're not digging through her trash, they're pointing out what she already uploaded. And frankly, what her exes are doing does say a lot about their character. That they finally had enough of being rewritten in her fantasy. So yes, it does say something. It says they're done being silent while she spins their narrative, victimizes herself, and weaponizes every past relationship as a cautionary tale where she is always the wounded party. The only character that this really reflects poorly on, well, we all know who that is. The eternal martyr complex. I'm just misunderstood. No, you're interpreted, based on the words you choose, the footage you upload, and the behavior you display. People aren't misunderstanding you, they're reacting to the exact persona you've spent a decade showcasing. And that question, would you ever be interviewed by a critic? We already know the answer. A real interview, one with follow-ups, facts, and accountability, doesn't offer the control she needs. She doesn't want discussion. She wants adoration or silence. More ritual affirmation, "You're amazing," followed by the obligatory "thank you so much." The sacred call and response of Amberlynn's carefully curated echo chamber. She doesn't need to silence the critics when she can just drown them out with a chorus of glittering delusion. These aren't just compliments, they're reinforcement. Every "you're amazing" lets her sidestep growth, ignore consequences, and continue spinning in place like a decorative wind-up doll. These comments aren't lifting her up, they're just numbing her down. Amazing? No, it's just a carousel of chaos that never stops spinning. Oh, Amber, I like to provide context. That's just a little euphemism for undermining your own apology in real time. It's her favourite dance. Step 1, say, "I'm sorry." Step 2, immediately explain why it wasn't actually that bad. Step 3, blame someone else. She doesn't provide context, she provides conditions, apologies with asterisks, contrition with footnotes. Every sorry comes wrapped up in a monologue designed to make you feel like you misunderstood her, you were too harsh, you didn't have the full picture. A sincere apology doesn't need a PowerPoint presentation and a blame-shifting finale. She's not apologizing, she's negotiating sympathy. And then more sacred relics of her backstory, food stamps at 20, the trauma touchstone she dusts off when she needs to re-establish her rags-to-buzzball narratives. She never misses the chance to remind us that she came from nothing, despite now filming Lego hauls from a fully furnished apartment funded by her trauma-laced clickbait. She weaponizes her early poverty like she does everything else, when it suits the narrative. The climax and the plot twist, like she's the lead in some drama and not the disoriented antagonist of her own unscripted tragedy. Amber, this isn't a plot twist, it's a consequence. And it's only a climax because, for once, the people around you stopped whispering and started speaking the truth, publicly, clearly, and without you controlling the edit. She says others are obsessed, yet she responds to everything. She watches everything, she's waiting for everything. She needs the reactions, because without them, her storyline collapses into the beige silence of accountability. This isn't the finale. This is just the moment the audience stopped cheering and started remembering who was writing the scripts. Of course she agrees. She only believes in free speech when it's flattery. She draws this little moral line between level-headed critique and bullying. But what she actually means is anything that doesn't validate me is harassment. If you're not coddling her or pretending her livestream meltdowns are TED Talks, you're just low-key inciting violence. The irony is intoxicating. This is a woman who's publicly humiliated her partners, mocked mental health, made actual allegations without proof, and reduced people to one-dimensional villains in her warped version of events. But the reaction channels are the real problem. No. The issue isn't that people are making money reacting to your content. It's that they're doing it better than you. Oh, that's exactly it, is it? The money, the poor generous martyr handing out dollar bills in exchange for betrayal? She wants so much to paint herself as the soft-hearted fool forever buying companionship and getting burned. But control disguised as kindness is still control. Offering money while emotionally tethering someone to you isn't generosity, it's leverage. And this line, "I can admit my wrongdoings," it's her favourite prop. She waves it like a white flag, then uses it to smother accountability. Because when you really look at her admissions, they're always followed by, "but they were worse, but they used me, but I was lonely, it was my BPD." She doesn't regret the manipulation, she regrets the outcome. And as for Destiny and Beck, they didn't take advantage, they escaped, and she's furious that they're not leaving quietly. This one wasn't even an answer, it's just a monologue wrapped in self-pity and tied with a bow of projection. You didn't harass Zachary Michael? You publicly targeted him, mocked him, questioned him, and rallied your followers into a dog pile while playing the misunderstood victim. Again. And now that he's stepped back, you spin it as proof that you're just stronger than the rest? No, it just proves that you've confused resilience with numbness. The difference between you and reaction channels is they criticize what you choose to post. Your content, your contradictions, your cruelty. You, on the other hand, attack people personally, and then clutch your pearls when they dare to respond with more poise than you ever managed. He didn't leave because you stood up for yourself. He left because the circus you run keeps trying to burn down the tent. You're not the bravest person on the internet, Amber. You're just the loudest when people stop clapping. Watching you rise above the hate, where is the rising happening? From this view, she's knee-deep in the mud, hand-painting targets on every reactor's back while wailing about victimhood with the subtlety of a foghorn. She isn't rising above the hate, she's bathing in it, she's stirring it, feeding it, and then acting shocked when the house smells like smoke. Growth isn't measured by how loudly you declare you're unbothered. It's measured in how little you need to say in the first place. And Amber's just narrating her meltdown in real time. Yes, accountability goes both ways. It's a phrase Amber loves to echo when she's trying to deflect her own. It's convenient she's only interested in mutual accountability when she's under fire. Salty Crab's video was composed, factual, and honest. There's no screaming, no filter-drenched breakdown, just truths. Amber's response, on the other hand, was a performance. Teary-eyed one minute, smugly smirking the next, with more lip smacks than substance. The only thing she held accountable was her livestream video orientation. She wants to talk about both sides, then let's. Because only one side has a decade-long highlight reel of manipulation, monetized breakdown, and filmed mistreatments. Proud of her response? She didn't respond. She reacted, loudly, poorly, and predictably. And then we're back in the circle of performative validation. "I see you," whispered like it's some sacred rite of passage into the church of unchecked behavior. Amber thrives in these moments. Not because they reflect strength or growth, but because they fortify her delusion. She's not so much stronger than all of them, she's just more committed to broadcasting the breakdown. Reaction channels move on, critics cite evidence. Amber clings to pain like it's a personality trait and then calls it resilience. They've poked and poked. Amber, if poking means holding a mirror up to your behaviour, then yes, there's been a lot of that. And you've done nothing but scream at your own reflection. It's a typical Amber tactic. Spend years uploading manipulative, often cruel content, reap the rewards, and then cry bully the moment someone criticises the consequences. The idea that she's merely reacting is laughable. This isn't a response, it's retaliation dressed in victim drag. You're not the bad guy for responding, you're the bad guy for pretending that this is new. And no one asked you to lovingly embrace your critics. We just asked you to stop weaponizing your audience every time someone hurts your feelings. But that's asking way too much when the truth is so inconvenient. So what did any of this show us? It just showed us the same thing it always does. That Amberlynn Reid is not interested in healing, learning, or growing. She's interested in winning, and when that fails, she rewrites the rules to pretend she has. Every break is a lie, every apology is a performance, every trauma is a tool. It showed us that she can't resist the urge to bait drama, play the wounded dove, and lash out like a rabid raccoon the moment she doesn't control the narrative. She isn't fighting for justice, she's flailing for relevance. When she's confronted with calm, articulate criticism like Salty Crab's, Amber doesn't rise. She implodes. She weaponizes illness, slanders creators, cries ableism while mocking NPD, and plays both victim and villain in the same breath. It just showed us that behind every fake tear, every smug grin, there's someone who cannot stand that people have stopped being afraid to say the truth. She's not unraveling because people are lying about her. She's unraveling because they're finally telling the truth, clearly, calmly, and without fear. And her throne of filters and deflection is buckling under the weight of her own legacy. It's another meltdown disguised as empowerment, another mask slipping just enough to show us the same tired performance underneath. She wanted control, she wanted sympathy, she wanted to silence the critics and failed. But that's the thing with narcissists. They never truly break. They fracture, loudly, dramatically, and always on camera. She'll be back. She always is. See? The break returns. Amberlynn is the only woman who could launch a new schedule before the current tantrum even cools. She's thanking everyone for their support as though she wasn't just raging on Instagram just a few hours before and tearing into critics like a raccoon with a grudge and a trash can. The little emoji sprinkles the final insult, kisses and sparkles from a woman who's done everything but glitter bomb the timeline with dysfunction. Mark your calendars, darlings. March 24th. The day we begin the exact same cycle again. New schedule, same chaos. Predictable, exhausting, delicious.